Hello. Yes, I am drinking a pounder. Do you have a problem with that? It's Halloween weekend and I am inside filming this instead of going out and partying and getting COVID, so I'm gonna have myself a pounder. There's nothing you can say about it. Alright, so today we are going to be talking about the books I read in October. Unfortunately, I didn't get to read as many books as I wanted to because October was kind of a busy month for me. Alas, it is what it is. I read 7 books. I think all but one of them were like under 200 pages, so they were all pretty short. Let's get into it. First book I read, which is now one of my all-time favorites in the entire world, and that is The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy and Other Stories by Tim Burton. Did you know Tim Burton wrote a book? Because I did not. It's essentially a collection of his poetry, and it has some illustrations in it, and they're like dark humor and kind of scary, but like mostly hilarious. I don't really know what I expected when I picked it up, but I love it. Like, I really want to read it again. I think I read it in like an hour. It's pretty short, but oh my god. Even if you're not really a Tim Burton fan, I would still pick this up just because it's so different and it's so funny. It made me LOL multiple times, you know? And that's hard to do. Most of the poems were very matter-of-fact and kind of sad. For some of them, that made them more funny. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. I enjoyed it so much. 10 out of 5. Definitely recommend. Oh my god. Next book I read was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlyn Doughty. Doughty? Don't know how to pronounce her last name, but basically it's a book about the author who worked in a crematory. Apparently, Caitlyn has a channel here on YouTube. I think it's called Ask a Mortician. I don't know, I'll link it below if you're interested. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was super interesting, and I really liked the way that it was written. The only reason why I gave it 4 out of 5 instead of 5 out of 5 is because really, I have a complicated relationship with non-fiction books, and I always tend to get a little bit bored. So I wasn't super thrilled reading this, because that's kind of just who I am when I read informational things. That being said, it was quite entertaining. She has a fun sense of humor, and the way she approached all these different subjects in the book is pretty lightheartedly, and she explained things very well. If you are interested about what happens to the body gruesomely after we die, feel free to read this. If you don't want to know about that, don't read this. Next book I read was The Shadows by Alex North. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. A couple months ago, I read The Whisper Man by Alex North and liked it, so decided to pick this one up. In both of those books, his writing style, like, it flipped between each chapter, basically. How do I explain this? Between each chapter flipped to a different character's point of view, and that can be pretty confusing for me even well into the book. When I've sort of adjusted to it, it still confuses me a little bit, which I don't love. It kind of throws me off. Like, I get why the author does it, but kind of bothers me. One thing I really liked about this book is it wasn't very predictable, and I've noticed that with The Whisper Man as well. I despise books where I can figure out the ending or what's coming next. This one I could not do that at all, really. Like, I had a little bit in my mind thinking of what's going to happen, and I got a very smidge correct, but like there was so much more where like that didn't bother me, you know what I mean? Like, it was a surprise still. The first 100 or so pages sort of dragged on, but once I hit like that 100 mark or around there, it picked up pretty quickly. The Shadows is about a series of murders that have a common denominator, and essentially the book is just trying to figure out like why they have this thing in common, and yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to give anything away. It was good. I would recommend both of Alex North's books, actually. But yeah. Fourth book I read was Rosemary's Baby by Levin. This was decent. I believe it was written in the 70s. So keeping that in mind, I ended up reading this sort of based off that, because the subject matter and how it ends is pretty startling, given it was written in the 70s. Like, I can see how it was sort of groundbreaking during that time. However, today it is not very groundbreaking. Like, it was still pretty good. It was kind of like, oh, well, that's it sort of thing for me anyway. Essentially, it's about this couple who moved into this apartment building that they were dreaming of moving into, and they meet this other couple there, and basically, not giving it away, but the main character, Rosemary, gets pregnant. And some things happen. Yeah. It's a horror novel, in case you didn't know. I did like the writing style. It was easy to read and simple, but like it flowed really well, you know? So yeah, overall I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Glad I read it. It was a short one, a nice classic, and I see why it's a classic, but again, during this day and age, it just wasn't that mind-blowing to me. It was still cool though. You know what I mean? Next book I read was Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This book I gave 4 out of 5 stars. If you don't know what Coraline is, they also made a movie off this book. Technically a children's book, I believe, and it's about this girl who's like sort of neglected by her parents, and she ends up finding this like quote-unquote other family living in her house, kind of. It's kind of like an alternate dimension in a way. That's how I'm gonna explain it. So essentially she's an adventurer, so she gets into trouble. You know, she's a young kid, so Jasmine is licking her feet. I don't know if you can hear that, but I hope you can't. You mind? A cool thing that my friend Megan told me about this book is, essentially, I believe it's categorized as a children's book, right? So when it was first being published, the editor had their child read this book to see if it was like too scary and like good enough to be like a children's book, you know? And the kid said it was great because they wanted the book to be published because they liked it, but apparently it terrified the kid really badly. So she kind of like lied and said that it should be published because she really wanted it to be published. And I've also heard that like it's a great adventure for children to read, but it terrifies adults. And I saw the movie before I read this book, so like in a way that sort of ruined my experience, but even with that, I still enjoyed the book a lot. There were some very creepy parts in it, and I kind of wish I didn't watch the movie beforehand, because for me, I was picturing the movie when certain aspects were being described, so that kind of sucked. But like, I kind of wish I would have been able to see where my imagination could take me further with it, so I felt a little restricted in that regard, if that makes sense. However, there still was a bunch of creepy parts to it, and I actually, when I finished it, I was like, yeah, that was pretty cool, but it wasn't like super scary. Like, I kind of thought I was gonna be a little bit more scared going into it, and then I went to bed and I was like thinking about it, and I was like laying there in the dark, and I was like, I kind of want to turn the lights on right now. So that's pretty cool, I think. A quote from this book I wanted to share is, "It is astonishing just how much of what we are can be tied to the beds we wake up in the morning, and it is astonishing how fragile that can be." The last book I read was The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. The thing is with this book is, I bought this trilogy off of thriftbooks.com because it has that book in it, Rip Van Winkle, and The Spectre Bridegroom. When I first bought it, I was thinking these were the original stories, and they're not. They're adaptations, and they have illustrations in them. So I technically didn't read the original version. Just put that out there. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, so that's why I felt like that aspect might be important, because if I read the original, maybe I would like it better. I believe this was made for children. Because of the writing style, it seemed very children-esque, which could be fine. But yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of stupid. I don't really know how to explain it. We all probably know that The Legend of Sleepy Hollow tells, like, about the Headless Horseman and whatnot. The story wasn't really about the Headless Horseman that much. Like, it was at the ending, kind of. It just, I don't know. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it, I guess. I just felt like I wish it would have been more about the Headless Horseman. Because it was more about the main character dude. What was his name? Ichabod Crane. And he just pissed me off. What are you looking at, child? Stop it. Get some help. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna watch the movie tonight, I think, so we'll see if my opinion changes at all. I hope the movie's better. It looks pretty good. Yeah, those were the books I read in October. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope maybe you found a book you were looking to read in the next... yeah. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me. I'm always looking for recommendations, even though I have like a want-to-read list of over 100 or so books. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I'm gonna do a thumbnail before I forget. That should be good enough. Alright, moving on. Hi, Jasmine. What are you doing today? Oh my god, there's some nose ASMR for you. Hope you liked that. The fourth book I read was